All right, we're back. Turn that off. Had my job at Clue. One day at the office, I was acting too cool, too aloof, and they fired my ass as I fell through. Muttered to myself, fuck, go make it, pick myself back up, my swagger's still too smooth. Yeah, the funds just transferred. You could call me a chancellor the way I'm such a tactician. Don't hand me no map if it ain't got no traps hidden. Yeah, you talking to a tactician. I need some detours, I need some echoes, I need some shadows. Bitch, this the digital Indiana Jones. Hey. Had my job at Clue. One day at the office, I was acting too cool, too aloof, and they fired my ass as I fell through. Muttered to myself, fuck, go make it, pick myself back up, my swagger's still too smooth. Yeah, the funds just transferred. You could call me a chancellor the way I'm such a tactician. Don't hand me no map if it ain't got no traps hidden. Yeah, you talking to a tactician. I need some detours, I need some echoes, I need some shadows. Bitch, this the digital Indiana Jones. Hey. All right, we're back. We are so back. We are so back. Another day. I will admit today, pretty low energy. I don't know how long the stream is gonna be. Probably not very long, but daily vitamins, right? So we power forward. Let me turn up the brightness on this TV real quick, and then we're gonna get back into this model context protocol thing. Got me some coconut water. Tidy up the face a little bit. Get my je ne sais quoi, feng shui, the vibe right. Have my job it. Okay. Let's make this next one. We're gonna duplicate this. Is there an easy way to duplicate this file? Rename file. No, it doesn't look like it. Let's do this. Duplicate episode 10. Oh, let's get rid of all that. Where are we starting? Let me post this link here. And I am going to go back to episode 9 and see where we were at. Right, so we were kind of talking about the core architecture, a host connected to a network. The client, I gotta go wash my guys' apologies. Mm. All right. All right. Cool. We're back. Again, apologies. So yeah, we kind of got into. I'm probably gonna end up reading over a lot of this stuff again: core architecture, host, client, server, some of the components, just to take another look. Won't be as in depth today, but read it again just to get this reps up. Take my daily vitamins. What does the SDK say here? Core architecture. So what do I remember? Yeah, basically there's a host, there's a client, and there's a server. We can think of the host as an application, like it says here, Cloud Desktop or an IDE that initiates the connection. And again, the differentiating factor between a host and a server is basically like a host is a physical machine that can act as a client or a server, whereas a server is like a piece of software that provides the tooling, the context, or the prompts that the clients actually plug into. Um, yeah, we looked at this. This is some TypeScript definitions. I wonder how it varies in Python class. Then you have an async function that's send request, send notification, receive request, receive notification. Is that the same here? Send request, send notification, request, and notification. And this is the protocol class. I imagine that it has the same sort of methods attached to the class, if that's the right term for it. You have the transport layer, which kind of determines if it's going to be a local process or if it needs to be an HTTP sort of request with some server-side events configured, i.e. like an external API versus a local process. A few different message types. Yeah, request, result, error, notification. Let's write that down. Message types. Request, result, error. Was there a fourth one? I thought there was. Yeah, notifications. Is that right? Cool. We went to the life cycle. I'm not as worried about getting too into the weeds on This documentation is really just to get a lay of the land. And same as yesterday, I'm kind of working through this course from takeoff. Resources are a core primitive in the MCP that allows servers to expose data and content that can be read by clients and be used as context for LLM. Resources represent any kind of data that an MCP server wants to make available to clients. This is variable code, I guess. It's multi-separate plus debug. The name of the tool, or the prompt rather, is debug error, which we'll call an asynchronous function called get messages and return. Here's an error I'm seeing. Can't remember what this format means, but these are backticks, and basically whatever is pointing to the memory binding of error will show up here, so it makes it dynamic. So the user, there's an error. This isn't said, I'll help analyze this area. What have you tried so far? I just restarted it. What else? Example implementation. So again, import the server, import the list prompts request schema. And the prompts are git commits, generate a git commit message, explain the code, code to explain, programming language, create a new server, available prompts, request handler, get specific prompt. Yeah, okay. Tools enable LLMs to perform actions through your server. Okay. Sampling, I don't know what that is. Let your servers request completions from LLM. Sampling is a powerful MCP feature that allows servers to request LLM completions to a client, enabling sophisticated agentic behaviors while maintaining security and privacy. How does sampling actually work? So the server sends a sampling create message request to the client reviews the request and can modify it. Client samples from an LLM, client reviews the completion, client returns the result to the server. Interesting. What was I gonna, search here? I don't remember what it's gonna search. Yeah, airplane. Yes. Got my roommate's loud.
Welcome into Takeoff's Model Context Protocol course. This is one of the most requested courses we've got in recent weeks here, so we want to make sure that we deliver for all of you. Model Context Protocol, as it's popularly known by MCP, is basically a standard for providing tools and resources to all your favorite AI apps. So we're going to talk about the protocol a little bit more. Weeks ago had this building agents with Model Context Protocol. They had this like hour and 45-minute workshop that's really, really well done. So kind of really nice sort of first party resource there. Let's talk a little bit more about the why of Model Context Protocol. So you kind of at least have this general sense now that, okay, MCP is sort of this protocol for building integrations for LLM apps, right? That's pretty straightforward. That's a pretty good one-liner. Mostly sums up the bulk of what MCP is, but why do we need it? So the nice thing about a standard, right, is you can build an MCP server, for example, and you know that you can build that server once and you can use it everywhere, right? You can use it in Windsurf, you can use it in Claude Desktop, you can use it in Cursor. So all of these different clients that support the MCP protocol, you're going to build kind of the suite of tools, and you're just going to be able to use it anywhere, right? You don't need to worry about, oh, I built the server for this one app, but this other app uses a different format, so I got to go change it, right? Build once, use everywhere. That's the key thing with MCP. Right now, a standard is only as useful as much as it gets adopted, right? If you want to have a standardization protocol, the only way it works is if people adopt it, right? And that's kind of why you're all here, right? Because MCP is starting to really take off in the community. Obviously, it's still pretty early days, as you guys saw with the roadmap. There's a lot of stuff they still got to get to. It's only, I want to say it came out November 25th of 2024, which we're recording this early March, so it's only been out, 3-4 months here. So really early days. But big apps like Cursor and Windsurf, like I said, are starting to support it, which we'll show you a demo of in just a second to kind of close off this quick overview video. But we are going to go ahead and really just try and kick off your ability to actually build these tools, right? That's the name of the game here, is how do we teach you how to build integrations for MCP so that you can do this whole build once, use anywhere kind of thing. Let's actually jump into a use of an MCP tool. So you'll see here, I'm actually in Claude Desktop, which is one of the MCP supported clients here. I also have Cursor open over here too, and you'll see we have 2 servers live. What's really cool, and what you'll notice, is we actually have, what we can do here is we can create a new Cursor agent chat. Let's actually jump back into Claude for a second, because I want to show you this interface. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to set MCP up inside Claude. So if you're like, okay, how do I get this set up? Don't worry, that's going to be coming. But you'll see if I click here, you'll see these are all the available tools that I have available between the 2 servers that I have active right now. And you'll notice I have those same 2 servers active in Cursor. Okay, and the reason why this works is because of the MCP standardization. We've built these 2 servers once, and we're using anywhere, right? We're using 2 separate clients, and we know just out of the box that they're going to work. So if I say get the weather for Los Angeles, what we should see is we should see Claude ask us if we can call a tool, which we're going to allow for this chat. It's going to give a latitude and a longitude. It's going to make an API call, and it's going to get the weather for Los Angeles, okay? So effectively, we have a weather server that is able to plug directly into the client, and the client can call the tools that the MCP server exposes. So if you're starting to feel a little bit lost, don't worry. We're going to be going over how to build servers from scratch, and once we get to that point, I think some of these pieces that you just saw will click a little bit more. But the important thing to take away, just at a high level here, is that we were able to build a weather server for any of our clients. We're using the Claude Desktop client, which is hooked up to that server, and it now has this set of tools. And the great thing about the standardization here is I can now go over to another client that supports MCP, and I can say get weather for Los Angeles here in Cursor with Cursor agent, and it should basically allow me to do the same thing as I can do with the Claude Desktop app. Okay, and you can see here, we are now getting that forecast here within Cursor. Despite this being a code editor, doesn't matter. We have an MCP server that allows us to use this get alerts function and this gets forecast function. It exposes them to both clients, and both clients are able to use those. Again, build once, use anywhere. This is the great thing about MCP servers, because as hopefully you're starting to think kind of in your head, well, as developers build more and more of these things, it's only going to get more and more useful, right? Because if you have an entire community that's building these servers and these clients on top of this protocol, everybody's going to have kind of all these different building blocks, all these different kind of Lego pieces to mix and match together, and you're going to be able to build this super robust ecosystem where everybody has access to all sorts of these tools, right? Any MCP server that's open source you could use, right? Once MCP eventually gets authentication with hosted URLs for MCP servers, right? You could have something like maybe Slack has an official MCP server, and you could very easily, add that URL to your client, authenticate with some sort of OAuth, and boom, suddenly you have your LLM that has access to all of these different tools for Slack, right? So you can really mix and match these, which we'll kind of get into some more advanced use cases here. But again, things to take away from the overview here. MCP, nothing too fancy. It's just a standard for providing tools and resources to your applications. Because it's a standardized format, it allows you to kind of do this whole build once, use anywhere format, where it's just going to allow for plug and play across all your different MCP servers, across all your different MCP clients. Okay, so we could just as easily do what we just did here with the weather for something like Windsurf or another popular tool, which is Klein, or the Claude Code CLI, right? There are all these different clients that are now popping up to support these different servers. So what we're going to do here is we're now going to go jump into a more high-level overview. We're going to talk a little bit more about the different pieces of MCP, just kind of the core parts and why they matter, to kind of define some things so you know what we're going to be talking about. And then we're going to be getting into building MCP servers, because that's where you kind of really want to live, right? That's where we really kind of want to emphasize the material here, because that's how you're actually going to build the tools that your LLM applications and your agents are going to be able to use. So that's enough rambling from me on overview stuff. Let's actually move on to much more interesting topics.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Super interesting. So I guess basically you can make some sort of server, put some data into it, turn that into some sort of context that you can call within any sort of client, like a Windsurf, like a... Interesting. So what does that look like then? To me, that kind of seems like that is a direct competitor of Clay, actually. It'd be like, hey, make a Google Sheets MCP server that is plugged into LLMs and is plugged into all these different integrations that they have. That has that data. Very cool. How do you transport that data to it, though? That's kind of a question. How do I expose or plug in to my Claude instance? I.e., I have some data on a server, let's say about my customers. Where did I expose the tool? So anyone in my company can touch the MCP server from Claude. That's the question I'm looking to have answered now. Pretty cool though. That's super interesting.
So at this point, we've established that Model Context Protocol, MCP, is just a standardized way to build tools, to build integrations, to build out these MCP servers, which you see in this diagram here, and connect them to MCP clients. So just to tie this back into the previous lesson, what the examples we were looking at there were, we were looking at Claude Desktop, and you can see here the available MCP tools that I have running. I have a linear server running, and I have a weather server running. Okay, so the one that we just looked at we looked at the weather server, right? We used that get forecast function, and we used that not just in Claude Desktop, which has MCP client support, but we also looked at this running inside of Cursor Agent, which also has MCP client support. So let's go back to our diagram here. So how does this work? How do all these different pieces fit together? What's going on here? Basically, if you're building an app, this is what MCP refers to as host applications. Okay, so this could be literally any app in the world. If you want that app as a developer to be able to support all the different MCP servers in the community, the MCP servers that your users want to use with their favorite AI apps, what you need to do as the host application is you need to build in MCP client support into your application. So one of the things you'll notice in the docs here, if we go over to the left here, is you'll see we have example clients and we have example servers. We should have a, where's the quick start here? If we click open this quick start, you should see for server developers and for client developers. So if you're somebody who's building an app, you're going to want to go ahead and build client support into your AI app so that all of your users can use their MCP servers. If you're somebody like us, right, and this is kind of the focus of this particular course, is you want to be a server developer because we're really trying to go about building all of these different integrations, right, these MCP servers, which is just a bundle of tools, resources, and prompts that you can plug into these AI apps, right, and we're really trying to focus on those. So if we actually look at a bunch of the different example clients and example servers here, let's actually take a look at the clients first. So you can see in the MCP docs, they kind of have this list of clients and they have a list of kind of core features of MCP here, what each client supports. So this is where clients get interesting because clients can choose which of resources, prompts, tools, sampling, routes, all these different features that MCP kind of exposes, which ones they want to implement. So what you'll see to use our Claude Desktop app and our Cursor app as kind of a framing here, what you'll notice is Claude Desktop supports resources, prompts, tools. Cursor right now only supports tools. So that get forecast function that we used with our weather server, that was a tool. So that's why that worked in both Cursor and Claude Desktop app. So if we actually go back over here really quick, one of the things that I'll show you is if you see this little kind of plug icon, if I click this, one of the things you'll notice is I have this create task template. So this is actually a prompt in an MCP server, which we're going to be talking about later. And if I click this, this is actually going to bring up kind of a little form almost where I can fill a bunch of template variables in here. And this is going to add the prompt to context. So if I just do demo, test task, this is a test task. And if I did priority urgent and submit this, what you'll notice if I click into here, because you'll see this filled out a prompt template here. And what this actually corresponds to, if I go over to my linear server code, okay, so we're just going to look at a little bit of code here. I'm going to search server.prompt, and you can see here we have that create task template prompt. You can see we have the inputs, we have a description for it, we have kind of the template format for it. Okay, so we're going to be going over how to add prompts later. But Claude Desktop supports MCP prompts, as you can see with the green check mark here. Cursor does not. So I could go build that MCP server, but the Cursor client has chosen not to support that prompt. And one thing I'll say is you're seeing a whole lot of red X's here. Part of the fun of being an early adopter of MCP, which is kind of the, we're in the early stages, things are still in active development and all that kind of stuff, is it just takes a little bit of time for the entire ecosystem to adopt all the different features, figure out what the best standards are, right? Even MCP itself is still kind of being developed. So over time, over the coming weeks, over the coming months, you're going to see more of these check marks turn from X's to green checks. So Claude Desktop right now, I think, is the best MCP client as a host app just because it does support tools, prompts, and resources. But most of what all of you are going to probably be building and using is going to be tools. So as you can see here, tools is kind of pretty much supported by everything, right? You can see Windsurf, very popular. Cursor, obviously very popular. Client is another one we see being very popular. But all of these different clients are basically picking and choosing which of the features of MCP servers that they want to use. So now let's talk about MCP servers, which is, if we go back to our diagram here, right, you can see you can plug as many different MCP servers as you want into a host application that supports the MCP client. So if we go to this list of servers, you can see here are a bunch of different servers. And what's really cool about all these servers is they're all open source. So you can actually go, if we wanted to go to the file system, MCP server, you can see all of the code for that. If you want to know, how do I build a server like this, right? What's going on here? So if you're somebody who's wanting to build MCP servers, which presumably is going to be 99% of you, right? That's kind of the entire point of why you're taking this course. This is an absolutely incredible resource because you can see, right? You can see all these community servers, all these kind of official integrations from these companies here, right? You can see popular AI startups like BrowserBase, Exa, Firecall, right? A lot of different companies here. You can even see big companies like Stripe are putting out official third-party servers. Super, super cool. So the reason that this matters and the reason that this kind of comes together with what we talked about in the last lesson is because all of those different servers you see here, all of those can be plugged in MCP server slot A, right? You could mix and match any combination of those, connect them to any of these MCP clients here, right? You can see the client list here. So you can take any of these clients and mix and match them with any of these servers to kind of form your ideal AI app building experience, right? Your ideal kind of AI agent experience, right? The idea is with the servers, you're exposing these integrations, you're exposing these tools to clients, and then in the client, you're actually using the actual kind of LLM under the hood, and then that's figuring out, okay, all of these resources and tools we have access to, how do we want to use those, right? And I think Cursor Agent is a really interesting UI for exploring how that actually works, which, we'll look at in more detail coming up. But this is kind of how all these different pieces fit together, right? You have these MCP clients, right? And this is just host applications building an MCP support so that the client can connect to any one of these servers. And if a host application supports the MCP client side of things, then any of your MCP servers are going to be able to be plugged into it. So this goes back to what we were saying in the last lesson. Build once, use anywhere. This is kind of the entire point. Once MCP really starts clicking for you, you can really see how you'll start to get hundreds. Last thing here before we actually get on to building our first MCP server, we want to talk a little bit more about kind of the key components of the MCP protocol and its core architecture here. So one of the things that I want to say, which I mentioned in the very first lesson, is that you can really, really easily get overwhelmed by MCP. Anytime that you're dealing with something that's a protocol, there's just going to be a lot of technical terms and a lot of complexity going on under the hood. But the great thing for you as a developer, right, and this is going to be 99% of you, you just want to start building things. You just want to get rolling. You just want to start building tools and integrations that you can actually give to whatever your favorite AI app is, right? That's really why you're all here. There's going to be maybe like 1 or 2% of you who really want to get super hardcore technical foundations and you want to understand every little detail of the protocol, which if that's you, that's awesome. Like if you have the curiosity there, definitely push on it. Never hurts. But what I want to kind of simplify for everybody else is you really only have to worry about kind of a few core things. And it turns out that all of the kind of complexity that MCP handles for you under the hood is just one of those things that you just kind of get without needing to do anything, right? Just by using the MCP SDK, which we're going to use in the next section as we actually start building out a server, right? That's going to take care of all of the things like the transport layer and kind of all of these technical details that, as a developer, as somebody who's just trying to build tools as quickly as possible to give to your agents, right? You don't really need to worry about too much. So we're going to kind of focus in this lesson on the things that you do need to worry about and you do need to be aware of, because this is where, as we move on to the next section, we actually start building the server, right? These are the core things that we're going to be working on, and this is where I really want to direct your focus, because these are kind of the useful bits for you that are highly practical that you're going to be able to take and go run with and build your own useful tools and all that good stuff. So if you do want to look at the architecture more in depth, the MCP docs are absolutely incredible. You can see they really go into detail here, and you can of course actually go to the specification section in their docs, and this is really where you can see a lot of the things like the actual base protocol, right? How does messaging work? What are, how do transport work? What's kind of the client server architecture, and what's kind of the life cycle of clients connecting to servers, and how are those initialized and all that good stuff. We don't really need to worry about that. Okay, we're going to be focused on actually building practical things. But again, for those of you who kind of are inclined to want to go dive in there, that's where you're going to find that information. So we're going to focus on 3 things. We're going to focus on prompts, we're going to focus on resources, and we're going to focus on tools. Right now, in early March here, those are kind of the core 3 things that MCP really exposes that are highly useful to anybody building their own MCP servers, anybody using community MCP servers, and hopefully we obviously get a lot more useful features down the line. I talked earlier a little bit about kind of the roadmap of MCP in the first half of 2025 and all these different things that we're going to be getting, right? Things like authentication and hosted MCP servers that don't have to run locally and all that kind of stuff. Again, once that stuff goes live, we're going to cover it here. We're going to update the course, but we really just want to focus on these core 3 things. Okay, so the first resource that we're going to take a look at here is, I should have said the first component that we're going to take a look at is resources, with some redundancy in wording there, but resources is a way to expose data and content from your MCP servers to LLMs on MCP clients. So what does that mean? Really, that's just a fancy way for saying resources are a way as we kind of kick off building our first MCP server. I want to talk a little bit about some of the really helpful resources that you can kind of use within the MCP docs. They actually have a lot of really good stuff here. So first of all, the introduction, we've been kind of looking at this through the previous section a little bit, but if you haven't kind of just perused through this, I think this is a really great supplement to the video lessons that you just watched. So definitely recommend you kind of peruse through the introduction here. And once you feel like you kind of understand the what and the why of MCP, what we can do is we can move on to for server developers.
I think that's it for me today, guys. I can't lie, I got a few different things in my mind today. A few different things on the to-do list. We got some of them done. I was hoping to get more done this morning, but yeah, I'm gonna cut the stream there, and yeah, hopefully tomorrow is a little bit clearer, and I can actually get into building my first MCP server. So, thank you for tuning in. Y'all have a beautiful day. Peace. Let me show you guys this real quick.